I will start. Um, okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Arturo. I'm part of Frontera Devs. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about game development. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just gonna show the whole thing. Um, can you also hear me all right? Just making sure.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, nice. So yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about game development. Now, I know everybody here it's like still in high school, so you'll everybody will have different um, machines, different systems. You might not be able to install Unity unless you're using like your own personal computer, which is totally fine. I think there will be still a lot to be learned from this information session. um, I would suggest to try to just take notes if you can. If you can't like download what I'm going to download, just try to take notes. Just try to get the information that I'm telling you, like the concepts, instead of trying to follow along with every little word I say. Taking screenshots might also be a very good idea if y'all are able to do that. But what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to go to unity.com, and it will take us to this page, right? Um, we're just going to click download, and we're going to scroll down here. Um, you can get Unity on Windows and Mac or Linux. I'm using Windows, so I'm going to click on the Windows link, and this will bring up my file explorer. This is just like the setup, so I can save it wherever I want. I already have one, so I'm not going to do that. But, or well, actually I will, because it'll open up right here. You can just click on it. It'll bring up this window. Click you agree. Um, Again, this is like just browse wherever you want to store your Unity, but I already have it, so I'm not going to go through with it. Um, but it will bring up something like this. Actually, might look up more like this once everything is downloaded. Um, so you can go ahead and create an account if you don't have one, but I'll just be signing back in. And everything is like stored, so I don't have to like make an account or anything. Um, so that's that. Again, if you can't get it, I just wanted to show it real quick. Like it's very simple, it's very easy to get. Um, but if you are, I will talk a little bit more about the game industry while y'all are trying to like download it if you are. If not, again, no worries. Just try to follow along with the information that I'm saying. So yeah, um, there are a lot of avenues in the game industry. There are a lot of like different aspects of it. Of course, we're going to be talking about um, like coding today because we're like developers. That's kind of what we do over here. But there are a lot of different avenues. You guys are very young. You have a very bright future ahead of you. So if you don't want to do coding, you decide that you want to do something else, you can still participate in the game industry. It's a very big industry. I believe it's like billions of dollars. It's like even more expensive than like making movies and stuff. But yeah, if you're someone that's very into art, you like drawing, you like making models, you like making music, the game industry has a lot of jobs for you. There's as many jobs making assets as there is um, like coding and such. So so that's one of the avenues that you can take. The other one, of course, is coding. Just like coding different mechanics, different algorithms for like enemy AI and stuff. Optimization is also very big because, of course, our computers are getting better and better, but we don't optimize correctly, we won't be able to get as much out of them as we should. And then the third um, avenue of the game industry is sort of like more hidden. It's more of like intangibles. It's just like general game design. So what makes the game you're making fun, right? So it's a lot of level design, a lot of just like how your game feels to play, um, and also I bunched narrative in with this because it's a there's like different sort of like something like Mario Brothers, right? It doesn't have like the greatest best narrative ever, but it is structured in a way that makes the player want to keep playing and like find out what's going to happen next, right? Um, I will say that the game industry is known for having a lot of crunch time, having a lot of unpaid hours. So it is unfortunate that that is the way that it goes sometimes. But you are doing what you love, so maybe you gotta weigh your you gotta put everything on a scale. If it's worth it for you to be part of the industry, then more power to you. Um, the other thing I want to say is that you shouldn't just stick to one of these things and call it a day. It's good to branch out and be able to say that you have had like diverse skills that will make you more mm, like valuable to whatever company you're working for. So, if you are someone that just wants to learn how to code, it might be good for you to also maybe pick up some level design, maybe like um, make some music on the side, um, because that'll only make your games better, especially if you're starting out and you want to make an indie game, and you have like a very small team. Uh, these sort of aspects of the game need to be divided amongst people, and say you only have like 3 or 4 people in your team, somebody's going to have to make models and code, right? Someone else is going to maybe also code and be part of like the sound team, right? Um, so it's up to you, like what you pick. But I will say that if you want to take it seriously, it might be best for you to at least like at the start pick up some different skills. Also, when you do go to the industry and maybe you'll be hired only to code, right? But at the same time, you will have to work with other people that are in the different fields that you need to be able to communicate with, and you need to be able to understand like what their job is so you can do your own job best. Um, so yeah, I know it's a lot, but here I have some examples of games that I think do a very good job at everything that I've been saying. Um, Maybe some of these you guys aren't old enough to play, but when you are, um, I think they do a very good job at uh, at everything that I was talking about. I would recommend this game right here, Outer Wilds. It's not as well known. It's not like super popular. It does have a cult following, and it's for a very good reason. It's very good at everything that I've been talking about. Great sound design, great atmosphere, very good theming. Fallout New Vegas is very good at sort of your like quest design and like making you feel like you're part of this world, like being very immersive. Super Mario 64 and Doom are actually a lot closer than you might realize. So they really just like have one very good mechanic, one or two, and they just sort of expand on those like throughout the game. So for Mario, it's like jumping around. For Doom, it's like shooting demons. But like at the core, it's like the same sort of game idea. Just have something that's very fun to do, and then like keep expanding it throughout like the experience of the game. Here I have some more games. Hollow Knight is another game that I really recommend. Sort of the atmosphere and like the music of the game takes it very far. Hollow Knight and Undertale were created by very small teams. I think Undertale it was like one guy, and Hollow Knight was like 2 or 3 guys. Um, but they're great examples of what can be done with like very limited resources. Um, I believe even in Undertale, the coding for the game is like not very good. It's known for not being very good. I, all of the text in that game is just in one super huge file, just one giant if else statement. Um, so you don't even need to be like that great at coding or that great at making art, but just keeping basic principles of game design, uh, it's very important. Um, these two other like RPGs are also very good. If you're into that sort of thing, Souls I know it's a little bit hard, but they're also very good at keeping the player entertained and like having very deep and complex like mechanics. So here are some other tools. Um, we'll share this like presentation with you guys right away, but here are two very good resources that I recommend. So if you go on YouTube and you look for Game Maker's Toolkit, um, this guy makes a lot of videos on what makes games good, like everything that I've been sort of talking about, and it's a very good resource for you guys. There's also GDC, which is it's kind of like the TED Talk of game design, where a person in the industry will go up and talk about their game and talk about what sort of makes it good and makes it satisfying to play. And I also just included the links here. So yeah, as I said, we'll share this presentation with y'all, either through Discord or through email. But with that being said, I do want to jump into Unity now. So yeah, as I said, you might have something like this. You won't have this project here, should be empty. Um, you will need to install a version of Unity. So we can go down here to installs, and we're going to install editor, this big blue button. We're going to go over to archive and download archive. And here we will get, we'll open a browser window. And if we scroll down, we'll see like all the other versions of Unity that like Unity has released. So I would recommend going with really like the most current one. So you might have heard Unity was in the news last year, I believe, for doing some scummy things, like as a company. Basically, what happened is that they wanted to just charge uh, developers more for using Unity. So they ended up having a lot of backlash with that. So they completely went back on it. Um, so as long as you use a version of Unity that's before 2024, you should be fine. Um, you won't have to like pay millions of dollars in like taxes or whatever. So yeah, just get like the most recent version of Unity. This one should be fine. Um, if you have like again Windows or Mac or Linux, but you can also just download it through Unity Hub. Click open, and it will take you back to the the software that we downloaded. It'll open up this window, and there's like different modules that you can get for like if you want to do iOS or um, there's one for the other phone, Android. Yeah, here it is. And you'll click continue. But I already have some versions of Unity. So once you have that, that might actually take a little bit longer to download, but that's okay. Um, we're gonna click new project, and here we can name our project. So I'm going to say like um, here in the location we can change where we want to store it. So I'm just gonna put it on my desktop and make a new folder. And store it there. Again, you are gonna need an account. So if you're not up to me, if you're not or caught up with me in like this screen, again, that's totally fine. I'm going to be going over some very basic things of like coding and like game design. So yeah, we're going to create a new project. It's also going to take a little bit. That's playing. Cool. This is taking too long, so I'm actually just gonna like find the project that I was already working on. But eventually, when it loads, look, I'm running like Zoom as well as Unity, so sometimes it takes a little bit. But once it finally opens, it'll look something like this. Um, this is a 3D environment, but there is a little button up here that says 2D, and if we click that, it'll just like sort of plan everything out. Um, the way that Unity works is that there's still like there's like three axes, right? Like in 3D, there's like up, right, and like forward and whatever. So there's always like those three axes, but when you click on 2D, it basically just gets rid of like the forward axis. So it's just up and down. But I'm gonna do like in 3D. It's really not as complicated as it might seem, um, or it doesn't add like too much more complexity. It's like pretty much the same thing. It's just that there's just like another axis, right? To worry about. But this is how Unity looks like. There's some tools up here, and this is what like how you interact with like your screen. So we have this hand tool where it'll turn our cursor into a hand, and if you click, you can like move around. You click and like move your mouse around or your mouse pad. Um, so that's how you do that. You hold the Alt key down, it'll turn into this eyeball. I and then you click it, and then you can move the camera around. Um, I think on Windows maybe it's another key, so just press a bunch of keys until the thing turns into an eyeball. You can move around, and this is for the. There's some other tools that I'll get into right now, but this is like the layout of Unity. So here on this left side, it's called the hierarchy. This is where our objects will be. So right now we just have, by default, we just have a main camera and a light source. So this camera is basically what we'll see in game. Um, this whole window that we're seeing is not what we're going to see in game. This is just for us to develop the game. But there's another tab up here next to this scene. It says game. And this is what we'll actually see in game. So this is what the camera is picking up right now. But we can go back into the scene. Um, yeah, we have our camera, our light. Over here, we have our inspector. Um, So this is basically telling us like all the attributes that our camera has. So all of the Unity is very like object oriented. I know some of you guys maybe haven't heard that word before, but it really just means that everything in Unity is handled as an object, um, or like yeah, like imagine you have a car, right? Um, and a car has different components. It has like its wheels, it has um, a steering wheel, it has the motor. So this inspector lets us see like the attributes of, for example, our car, right? Um, so we have this transform, which is basically like its position in the world. If we like move around with it, you can see like the camera moves around. Also, if we rotate it, it'll like look at different angles. I don't think the scale does it, but we'll just leave it where it was. So this is our inspector. We also have our project and our console tabs. So this project tab is basically where all our files are going to be stored. So right now we only have one folder that says scenes and sample scene, which is the scene we're currently in. Um, a scene, you can think of it as like, I don't know, like a room maybe. Um, Sometimes in a game, you're inside of a room and then you exit the room and like it'll load. And then you're like in another room. That's basically what a scene is, just like different parts of the game. Um, I can actually do a little demonstration. I'm going to create another scene and I'll say like other, and then if we double click on that and open it, it'll obviously like look the same. But say we get rid of this light and we go back into our sample scene, their light will be there, right? But so yes, we have our very basic scene. And we're going to just start like adding some stuff on here. So we can go to this the hierarchy panel. We can right click and this little like menu will pop up. We can go down to 3D object and say we just want to put a cube, right? So we're just going to click on the cube. And now if we go into our game scene, there we go. Now if we go into our game scene, we will see a cube rendered in the window. Um, so this is very cool. Now, as I mentioned, there are some other tools. So you saw me using this sort of like axis tool to move the cube in different directions. So you just grab onto an arrow and like move it just in that like direction. But if we like look closely, there's also these like little squares that are like in the middle of that. So if we grab onto like this bottom square, we can like move it along this sort of like plane. Um, and then if we go into like this one, we can move on this plane, and then also on this one. Um, put it in the middle. There's also this like rotation tool, which, as the name implies, will let us rotate the cube. So um, we can grab onto it and we can rotate it around on like all the different directions. And if you want to like sort of get numerical with it, you can like also change the rotation over here. I'm just gonna leave it at all zeros for now. This, um, but yeah, there's also this. This tool's kind of weird. It's like it kind of like reads where you're looking at the cube from, and like it'll try to do its best to sort of. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't really usually use this one. Um, but there is another one where this one, the one with it's like these squares, which is like the same as like this arrow one, but instead of moving it around, it like expands it. So we can do something like this, that, and then we go into our camera and put it in the right position. Maybe adjust it a little more. We can see that we've created sort of like an arena for our game, sort of like a floor layer. But now we should add maybe like some sort of character, right, that we can move around. So we're gonna go back into this hierarchy. We're going to right click again. We're going to go down to 3D object and let's make it a cylinder. So now you can see that we have some sort of like, things are coming together. We have some sort of like plane and we have a character. Um, of course, they're like the same color, so let's try to change that, right? We're going to go back into our assets folder where our scenes folder is. We're going to right click, create another folder. And we can name this materials. It's very important to keep like all of your assets in Unity in like different folders, um, just so it's like organized and like if somebody else is using the project, like they know where to sort of try to look to find things. So we're going to open up this materials folder. We're going to right click again and create, and there's this material option, and we're just going to name this. And then over here we have like the attributes of our material that we just created, and we can click on this albedo, whatever that means, and we can go. There's like the slider that we can move all the way to red, or we make it pink sounding red. Sure. Um, and as you can see, the material changes here. And then if we click on it and we drag it over to our big square, we can drop it and we'll change the color of it. That's pretty cool. But right now, if we run the game, it doesn't do anything, right? It's just a cylinder and it's just a cube. So that's really boring. So we're going to click on this cylinder. You can click on it like through the hierarchy just on this window. Um, and it'll highlight what object it is in the hierarchy. So as I was saying, in the inspector, you can see that it has like a lot of different attributes. Right now, we just have really this transform, sort of like the mesh renderer, which is just like sort of rendering this the actual like cylinder here. And we also have this capsule collider. So this collider, I mean, it does as like the name implies, it's going to collide with things. It's going to like let it detect when things are overlapping with it. So there's a little button down here that says edit collider. You can actually see it looks more of like a capsule, but it's okay. It'll do the job. But yeah, this is like default. I didn't add this, so just whenever you create a cylinder, it'll just look like this. But we can see sort of like the balance of the cylinder, and if we really wanted to, we can like make it sort of like super big and move it around. If you've ever played a game and you sort of you get mad because like a bullet um like raised you, but it like actually like took damage away from you, but like it didn't really touch you, or like it seems like it didn't touch you. Um, it's because the collider wasn't like completely um like where the bullet should be. So like the collider might have been like much bigger than the bullet. And it can cause frustration. So you should try to make your colliders like the same size as your like whatever you're actually rendering for like the model itself. Um, but we're gonna go down here to add component, and we're gonna click on, or we're gonna search for rigid body, And this is what's going to give our cylinder and our character physics. So just by adding this alone, if I now click on play, the cylinder will fall. So just it looked like it kind of just like consported or whatever, but if we put it up higher, you can see that it's falling. That's cool. Um, but now again, we still don't have like any control over our character. It's just like falling by itself because it has this rigid body attribute. So we're going to change that by again going back into our assets folder, and we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to name this. So again, I know that y'all maybe haven't even coded in your life before, but that's all right. I'm gonna go into like the very basics of coding. Um, so that way, when you do go to college and you take like game development class, you'll be a little bit ahead. And of course, they'll have at least at UTRGV, we have like computers where Unity is already pre-installed, so you can just go into whatever computer, um, and like you can just start making your own thing. But for now, just sort of try to again like just try to get the basic concepts of what I'm trying to say. So we're going to, again, right click, create C# script. And we're going to call this. Um, so Unity does use C#. So you might need to also install C# on your device. And I'm also using Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE, which basically just means that this is where I code my code. Um, But by default, as soon as I open a C# script in Unity, I will have it'll look like this. Um, well, just some packages that it's importing or whatever. Um, it'll have like this class object, and it will have these two. They're called functions. So we have this void start. So we have this void start parentheses open bracket, and this void update parentheses open bracket. So basically what this does, this start, as the name implies, runs only at the start of your game, and this update will run every frame. So we all have heard of a loop. It's basically what it is doing. It is just looping over and over. I will show this by using debug. If there's anything that you can take away from this presentation, when you do start coding in Unity, is this debug log. Debug log is going to be your best friend in the world. It's very good for um, debugging, which is like fixing your code. If there's an issue with it, you can debug log something. I'll show you what it does. Um, let's just print out a little message that says, now we go back into our game. We can attach this movement script that we created into like the inspector of the cylinder. So we'll just click and drag it down. And now we can see that the movement script is part of our cylinder. So when we run this game, Okay. Okay. I don't know what happened, but now it works. For some reason. Um, that's a weird bug. We just had to like reset uh Visual Studio Code for some reason. But yeah, let me run it again so you can see what I was talking about. Um, get rid of this on those. So yes, we have this debug log which just says hello Unity, and we run it. Hopefully it'll say it. Okay, yes. We'll have this output to our console, which is this hello Unity. Um, it's there's like a 2 on it because I also attached it to the the cube, but as I was saying, yeah, like this start function will only run once, like at the beginning. And if we do something like debug.log uh, in the update method, we can see that it runs 167 times, which is just like it runs based on like my frame rate of like my machine and like Unity, so it'll just run forever. I can show you like a better example of this. I'll do something like this. So we can do float. And a float is basically just a number. So we're just telling the computer, hey, reserve this chunk of memory for a float. And we can name it something. I'll name it Sando. See why a little bit. We'll say equal to 0. Now in math, we have an equal to 0. When we have like something like equal signs, it usually implies that whatever's on the left side should equal whatever's on the right side. In coding, it works similar. However, really what we're doing here is that we're assigning 0 to this horizontal. Um, so like I was saying, the computer itself will say like, okay, have to find space for a float. And in this space for a float that is called horizontal, I'm gonna put 0 inside of it. So you think of like a box, right? You have a box storage, you open it up, put the 0 in there. Um, that's like the very gist of how like declaring variables works in code. Um, but we have this horizontal that's just equal to 0, and I'm going to just add a number to it, or like add. So we're going to do 0.1 f. F is just like, I'm just putting it because it's a float, so I have to put f at the end, but it's just 0.1. Um, so this will add 0.1 to this float, and if we print it out, run it, you can see that it'll just keep adding 0.1 every like microsecond or whatever. So it goes really fast. It's already like at 200. I can't even keep up with it. Um, but yeah, the, but anyway, um, so that's like the very gist of how like start and update work. And we can use this to move our character, right? So we're going to start trying to move our character. So I have this horizontal, but I also want a vertical, right? To move like our character sort of like in the axes. So in this update method, we're going to say um, horizontal, and we're going to assign input. And this is sort of like a function that's provided by Unity. So if we want to get something like the player presses a key down, right? We call this input, and then we can do get x is wrong, and we're gonna put in quotation marks over it. So yeah, just to explain this a little bit deeper, we have our horizontal um, attribute that we like, or like variable that we initialized, that we created up here. Um, and we're going to assign whatever the player um, does on the keyboard, and we're going to get this horizontal um, sort of horizontal. This horizontal thing is also like provided by Unity. So what this does is that if I press on the A key, it'll return -1 into this horizontal, and if I press the D key, it'll be +1. So I can do that as well. So you can see like horizontal right now is just 0, and I'm gonna press the A key, and it'll turn into -1. And I'm holding down the A key, so it'll just keep saying it's -1, and as soon as I let go, it'll go back to printing out 0. And if I press on the D key, it'll give me this +1. So the way that we're gonna use this to move our character is that we're going to get this transform attribute that's part of our cube that says like where our position is, um, or part of our cylinder. So right here, our position angle is it's at 5, right? If we decrease it, it's going to go to the left. If we increase it, it's going to go to the right. Um, so as you can imagine, what we're going to do is that we're going to call our game object. We do this by literally just typing game object. Um, uh, so what this is doing is that it's saying like whatever game object this script is attached to, go into its transform. So the script that we have movement is attached to our cylinder. So from this movement script, it'll go up to this transform, and it'll say we can like change the position of it, right? So dot position, we're going to do plus equals, which is like how I was showing with like the printing out horizontal, um, like adding 0.1. But instead of adding that, we're just gonna do vector 3. Um, try not to get caught up in like vectors too much right now. But basically, this vector 3 is really just saying like these three numbers, right? This x, where it's on the x, where it's on the y, and where it's on the z. Um, and yeah, and we want, for our horizontal movement, we want to update this x variable. So it's the first one. So we're going to do here, horizontal, and then comma, 0, comma, 0. Oh, I forgot to do creating any, but yeah, now as soon as we run it, if we um, click on our our ARD keys, I clicked on A and like you saw the cylinder just blast over to the left. Um, that's okay. What happens here is that like, as I was mentioning, this update method runs basically as fast as it can. Um, but we don't want it to run as fast as it can, obviously, because things like that happen. So we're going to tie this down by multiplying it by time, delta time. Again, also time.delta times is going to also be your best friend in Unity whenever you have any movement, you usually want to tie it down to time dot delta time. That's going to ensure that whatever movement is happening in your game is not like dependent on how fast your computer is. Because otherwise, if you had like a really fast computer, um, you would be moving all over the place, and someone that has a slower computer would the character would move a lot slower, and that's obviously like not fair if you're playing like a multiplayer game, of course, but even like single player games, it's going to be very jarring. So we're gonna tie that down to like time, and when we move, when we press on our A and D keys, we can see that it's like slowly moving around. So that's how we create basic movement. Obviously, that's too slow now, so we're going to make another variable, low speed. And for now, we're just going to set it equal to 2.5. And again, I have to put a little half just because it's a float. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with our time. We're going to multiply it by speed. We run that, we'll see that it moves like slightly faster. Maybe it's still a little too slow, so maybe I'll do 5. Something that I want to show actually is that if we put public on this float here, we save it, we'll be able to see this speed attribute in our inspector, like while we're running the game. So if we do like 2.5 again, it's like still slow, but if we blast it all the way to 7, we can move a lot faster. And having these attributes here, um, having these attributes here is just going to make developing games like a lot faster, right? Because you don't have to go into the script every time. You can just manually move things here, like while you're running the game, and you can see changes in real time. But basically, what we're going to do here is just do the same thing for our vertical. So vertical, but again, this vertical, this whole thing is just like a Unity sort of thing, where Unity, like, if you want to detect anything, you input, and this get access raw is like, I think if you even like look through some of the settings, like you'll be able to change um, how you call it. But basically, it's just a setting that says if, like I was explaining, if you press A, well, in this case, if you press S, it's going to go to -1, and if you press W, it's going to go up to 1. And we're going to do the same thing here. But instead of having in the here, we're going to do in the Y. Actually, no, we're not going to do it in the Y, because if we do it on the Y, what will happen is that our game object's just going to start going up and down. And that's obviously not what we want. We wanted to go like forward and backwards. So instead of in the vertical, instead of doing it in the Y, we're going to do this. Now, we can play. We can see that we're moving it's backwards. Very good. We can move our camera a little bit more, so like um and angle it maybe like downwards. I feel like that provides like a better view of like our character, like a better perspective. Um, but yeah, you can those are just things that you can sort of mess around with on your own. Um, the other thing that I'm going to show how to do is collision. So as I was saying, you have on the cylinder, you have this collider, um, and that is how we like measure collision. So I'm gonna do like just gonna put like a sphere here. Just gonna leave it there, and what I'm gonna do here is um, we're going to tag this. So basically, a tag is just kind of what it sounds like. Um, we're just tagging it with some sort of attribute, like we're just kind of it's like a name in a way, but it's sort of more general because you can put a tag on multiple objects. But we're going to add one. We're going to say this is like a. We're just going to call it like one or something. Um, and we're going to our sphere. We're going to tag it with button. Now, if we go into our code and we say, so we have this like start method and we have our update method, but we want to create our own method for collision. So we're going to do um, oh, um, now there's an autocomplete thing that you can get for C Sharp and Unity. It's very useful, as you can see. If I just click on like if I just start typing, like it'll give me a bunch of names of different functions that are like provided by Unity. So definitely look into that as well if you want to code with Unity. So we're gonna say like trigger enter. And again, this is just like a function that is like sort of provided by Unity. But if we do something like basically what's going to happen is that as soon as the object that we have touches another object, um, this collider will let us like manipulate that other object. So it's already called like other for us. So we can do like other dot game object, um, and we can say something like dot set active as false. This set active is really just turning it off. So if we can see, we have this sphere. There's like a little check mark up here. If we click it, it's going to disappear. And if we click it back, it's going to appear again. That's basically what this set active is doing. Um, so we're saying that like as soon as our object collides with another game object, it'll set that game object as false. And also this is an on trigger. So there's like two types of collision in Unity. We're not going to worry about them too much right now, but really you just have to like make sure that if you're using a trigger function, that you have this trigger check mark on. And now if I go over to it and touch it, it'll disappear, right? And I don't have anything to bring it back, right? Like in my code, so it's just going to stay dead forever and we can load it again. Um, I'm going to fix the falling over problem. Um, just real quick. There's in this rigid body, there's these constraints, and we can like freeze our rotation. So now we won't like ever fall over like you were seeing. You can show try to reword. Just trust me that now it won't ever fall over. But if we want to do something like um, we don't want like our game object to sort of like what's it called like just disappear everything that it comes in contact with. So that is where our tag is going to come in handy, right? So we have this tag that button. Um, so what we're going to do is that we're going to do an if statement. Um, an if statement is again also something that is very basic to coding, and we're going to use this by calling this other game object, and we're going to go into tag. We're going to set it equal to what side. basically what this is saying is that uh, this whole function will only run when something is touching um, our game object, and it's saying like check this other game object and make sure its tag is button. And if it is, then it's gonna go run this line of code and it's gonna say, okay, we'll turn it off, right? Like how we saw. So like how I'm showing, or like how we're showing, you can have this sort of you can have like another sphere, right? That has like that is not tagged with button. So like only this tagged button one will like disappear. And then when I go over to this one, it'll actually just it's a little too high, but even if I move it down, you can see that it won't disappear. Um, But if I do tag it with button, then maybe I have to reset it. But if I tag this with button and move it down. Oh, also it's because it's not triggered, right? But if it is triggered and it's tagged, it'll like disappear. But yeah, those are like the very basics of Unity. Like you can do a lot with just like moving um, and like disappearing things. Um, the only other thing that like maybe you could use is like something like that. So another thing that is also very useful in Unity is the documentation, right? So say I don't remember how to add force to something, right? I can just Google it and I can say like add force or like jump with it, right? Um, There like you can see like a bunch of different things, but um, so yeah, this is like the Unity documentation. Um, and there's like it'll basically tell you like everything that you can do with Unity. So if you like sort of just even like look through some of what the things you can do, there's like obviously a lot. Um, and you're obviously not gonna have to like use or like remember all of these things because they are in like sort of this manual. Um, but we can do something like code, see if it works for us. Um, and oh my god, wow, we copied a bunch of code and now we can jump. That's really cool. But yeah, the Unity documentation is going to be very useful. Um, if I can explain this like real quick, we're kind of out of time, but just to sort of like explain this one line of code is this is working very similar to our get access draws. We're just instead of getting the access, we're getting like a button, and this jump is again part of Unity. It's tied to the spacebar, so whenever I click the spacebar, it'll go into this function and it'll run this line of code. So again, just game object goes into our game object. This get component function will get the rigid body. So like this rigid body, like it'll say like, okay, look for a rigid body, right? Um, and then a rigid body has a function itself, which is add force. And we can say transform it up, multiply it by 5, and if we do something like 100 or whatever, Maybe it'll come back down one day. It won't. There it is. Everybody said and some. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, I was just talking about this game object, or like this one line of code, where you have this game object and you have this function that says get component, which will go into the game object that this script is attached to, and it will look for a rigid body. And then this add force function is part of the rigid body sort of like attribute. So with any rigid body, you can call this add force method by just doing like a period add force. Um, and then it'll take some inputs. You can say like just transform up, which is just like literally up, multiply it by 100 and it'll jump. But yeah, it's kind of like a lot to sort of condense into an hour. But those are just like the very basics of like Unity, like moving, jumping, and just collision. You can do a lot of things with that, just starting out. But as I said, um, there's a very big community online for Unity. So chances are that if you want to do something, it's probably been done by somebody else, at least like something like similar, and you can just Google it and like sort of like I did, just kind of look at their code, kind of do what sort of follow what they're doing, and really like making games is just about uh, having different mechanics that interact with each other. So maybe you say like, well, I have this jump method from over here, but I also want to have, um, I don't know, this like other thing over here that somebody else did, and then I'm gonna put those together and see how they interact with each other, and maybe I'll add my own thing. Um, but yeah, that's like pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thank you for joining. Um, I don't know if you want to say anything, Carlos. Or...
There were some comments, some questions from Kaylee. She's
Oh,
asking importing models like characters.
oh, yeah, yeah. So it's going to be like um, for Unity, it's very like easy to sort of have things. Um, Basically, if you have like a file somewhere in your computer, um, let's see, uh, you can just like click it and like drag it into your project folder, and like it'll be here. Um, and then you can like just kind of do whatever you want with it. This is just a text file, so it's not going to do anything. But it's really easy like to import things. Something that I can mention as well is the store, not store. Um, and you can look for like this. This is a great website for like trying to get some stuff for sometimes free. You can do like mm, yeah, it's so high. You get this free guy that's Mr. Dimples. You can add it to our project. It's gonna ask me this. But yeah, there's like different places online that you can get models. If you already have your own, that's also cool. But you can just kind of add it to your assets here. Um, and it's going to do the same thing that I'm doing. It's literally just like dropping it, like just you have like the file of whatever model you're using, and you're like just like dropping it in there. Um, where did Mr. Dimples go? I don't know.
He's in the
Um,
fifth file or fifth row. It's You just have a dimple.
Dimples.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
Yeah, dimples. You just download it, import it. Um, and it will give me this like dimples thing. Um, but this is really just like a file. This is like an FBX file. Um, so yeah, like whatever like model you have, just look into like getting it into like this sort of format, and then we can just like put it in there and it'll be there. But yeah, looks like me. That's how do developers start their own unique models, like their own created characters? Yeah, it's like pretty much the same. Like you make your own model, you have your own model. Um, and then you can just like drag it into this editor and you just drop it. One thing I will say is that I actually don't really like know how to do fully is the sort of like the colors of it. Um, there's like a material here that has like all of Dimples's colors. It looks very scary. Um, but this is just like a texture map. Uh, so basically, this is just like a file. I can open it, but this is just like oh my god, this is disgusting. Um, this is just like a file with all of like Dimples's like features. And it looks very weird, but I'm not entirely sure how uh, developers do that. But I do know that you're gonna have to like make something like this and like make it it'll sort of like make it so that it wraps around the model correctly. Um, but yeah, I'm sure that there's like a lot of documentation online on how to like create a material for a model. There's also like probably a lot of videos how to make materials, beginner's guide on materials. This guy looks like he is doing exactly what we're sort of like looking for. So just go on YouTube and like um, most people, but yeah, um, Google's gonna be your best friend in developing. But which services? Oh yeah, yeah. You can make your own bottles with Blender, something like this. Um, again, like just downloading it through whatever Blender. I might have it. I don't really know how to use Blender super well, but it's gonna look kind of similar to Unity, where you just kind of start with a square. You can like mess around with it some way somehow. Yeah, you can probably just click like imp or export and as a FBX file. Just put it on like desktop, and then go and look for my FBX file, and then bam, that's my thing. Um, it's like super messed up because I don't really know how to use Blender. Mm, it's like it's not like detecting correctly like where this sort of square is or whatever. Mm. Maybe if I actually just move it. Yeah, it's like really weird, but um, oh, it's because there's a camera. Oh yeah, you're just gonna have to look into like how Blender works specifically with like Unity, but that's kind of like very quickly sort of how you import something, how you create something. Um, but yeah. Um, does anybody else have like another question? Well, thank you all very much for coming. If I know there's like that Discord that everybody should join. I'm on that Frontera Discord, so if you have any other questions, you can just message me directly. Be like, thank you, Carlos. Should be easy to find me. Just Arturo Mesa. I'll be there, and I'll answer any other questions that you guys have. But with that, yeah, you are free to leave. So we'll see you later. Thank you, Kaylee, for attending. Thank you, Diego.